Yet. It might have had a technical foul there just as his first half was expiring.
Hi everyone. I'm back with another exciting video just for you. I hope you're all doing great and having an amazing day. Today's video is packed with exciting updates and important information, so make sure you stay with me until the very end because you won't want to miss a single detail. Now, without wasting any more time, let's jump straight into today's video. Let's get started. After receiving her sixth technical foul and a $1,000 fine, Caitlin Clark had every reason to complain. But instead, she made a decision that left everyone completely surprised. Indianapolis felt different on Friday night. It was one of those rare evenings when people stopped talking, stopped scrolling, and simply watched what was happening. Almost nobody in basketball history had ever accomplished what Caitlin Clark was doing on the court. By the time the final buzzer sounded, the entire basketball world was still trying to understand what they had just witnessed. She finished with 45 points, 2 blocks, 4 steals, and 10 assists. Only 4 other players in the history of professional basketball, men's or women's, had ever produced a stat line this rare and remarkable. Even more impressive, she did it in less than 30 minutes while still playing under a minute's restriction. She had not even been fully cleared by her own coaching staff. If you're enjoying this content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 85% of viewers still haven't subscribed. It only takes a second, it's completely free, and it truly helps support the channel. So have you subscribed yet? If you have, thank you so much for your support. Now, let's get back to the video. Analysts were comparing her performance to Michael Jordan. Luka Doncic's name was also being mentioned. Social media struggled to find the right words to explain what had just happened. For one unforgettable night, everything surrounding Caitlin Clark was about basketball, what she achieved on the court, what it meant for the record books, and what it said about the future of her career. Then Saturday arrived. Just 90 seconds later, the entire conversation changed. Clark ran into a hard screen set by Liberty center Jonquel Jones only 90 seconds into Indiana's next game against the New York Liberty. She fell to the floor and looked toward the officials expecting a foul call, but none came. She got back up, spoke to the nearest referee, and was immediately given a technical foul before the game had barely begun. That technical became her 6th of the season and came with a $1,000 fine. Suddenly, the same player who had just joined one of the rarest groups in basketball history was now only 2 technical fouls away from an automatic 1-game suspension. The excitement from the previous night was still everywhere. Highlight clips continued to spread across social media, and fans were still celebrating her historic performance. Yet before she had even settled into her second game of the weekend, the league had found its biggest star. How could the sport celebrate history on Friday and then punish the same player less than 24 hours later? That question hit fans hard. Indiana went on to defeat the Liberty 108-88, getting revenge after losing to them earlier in the season. Kelsey Mitchell led the way with 33 points. For a Fever team sitting at 15 wins and 10 losses, while battling for playoff position in an increasingly competitive conference, it was an important road victory with major postseason implications. But the win was hardly the main story. The technical foul became the headline. The fine became the headline. The numbers became the headline. 6 technical fouls were already on the record, with only 2 more standing between Clark and a mandatory suspension. Less than 24 hours after one of the greatest individual performances in women's basketball history, fans found themselves counting technical fouls instead of celebrating basketball. For many people who had followed the season closely, this didn't feel like bad luck or poor timing. It felt like the latest chapter in something that had been building for months, one controversial whistle at a time. To understand why Saturday created such a massive reaction, you have to go back to June. That's where this story truly begins. During a game against the Phoenix Mercury, Clark received another technical foul that many fans and analysts believed was questionable at best. It was the kind of heated moment that officials usually allow to pass without making it a bigger issue, the kind of call most players quickly forget. But this one didn't disappear. After reviewing the play, the WNBA chose to uphold the technical instead of rescinding it, even though the league had overturned similar technical fouls for other players earlier in the season. The issue wasn't that a single technical foul would ruin a season. The bigger concern was what that decision seemed to reveal about how Clark's situation was being handled compared with everyone else on the court. That one technical foul became much more than just another whistle. That single decision sparked the controversy almost immediately. Fans noticed it right away. Within hours, screenshots of the ruling were spreading across social media. Side-by-side comparisons filled timelines, showing players displaying similar or even more aggressive behavior on the court. Yet those players were not facing the same level of scrutiny or the same disciplinary consequences, even though they had shown similar frustration or had done far more in the heat of the moment. That led many fans to ask one simple question. Why would a technical foul be rescinded for one player, but remain on the record for another during the same season? From that point forward, every technical foul Clark received was viewed through that same lens. By the time her sixth technical arrived in July, fans were no longer reacting to a single whistle. They were reacting to a pattern they believed had been building since the spring. Game after game, box score after box score, screenshot after screenshot, every controversial call was collected, reviewed, and compared. More and more people became convinced that the league was either failing to recognize the pattern or choosing not to address it. The June technical cost Clark more than just a fine. It also cost the league the benefit of the doubt from a fan base that was already paying close attention and was now watching every detail with even greater focus. What made the situation even harder to dismiss as simple fan frustration or internet noise was the fact that respected voices inside the game had also started raising concerns. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White was one of them. She wasn't speaking as a fan or an anonymous social media account. She was speaking as a professional coach who had to carefully manage her team while discussing officiating in a way that would not create more problems with the league office. After one of Clark's earlier technical fouls, White told reporters there needed to be conversations about using those fouls more strategically against her player and finding a better way to handle the situation. Think about what that statement really meant. A head coach publicly acknowledged that Clark's relationship with WNBA officiating had reached a point where it required active management by the organization. It was no longer something that could simply be ignored or dismissed as an overreaction from social media. It had become an issue that required careful planning. When a coaching staff chooses its words so carefully while discussing such an obvious pattern in public, it shows just how serious the situation has become inside the league itself. National sports media also began paying close attention. Commentators from major sports outlets started describing the conversation around Clark's treatment using increasingly strong language. One week she was being celebrated as the league's biggest attraction, and the next she appeared to be facing stricter discipline than many of her peers. Once that discussion moved beyond WNBA-focused coverage into the broader sports world, the league no longer controlled the narrative. The conversation began to take on a life of its own. Casual fans, who had never paid attention to technical foul rules, suddenly found themselves questioning whether the league was applying those rules consistently and fairly. That kind of attention carries far more weight than an angry post on social media. It shapes the league's reputation in real time through a conversation it did not start and could no longer ignore. Looking at Clark's place in the league's technical foul standings only made the debate even more complicated. She was tied with Kalia Copper for second place, behind only Angel Reese. But those three players have very different styles of play. Reese is a physical inside presence who battles through constant contact. Copper is an aggressive two-way guard who relentlessly attacks the basket. Clark, on the other hand, is primarily a perimeter playmaker whose game is built around passing, shooting, and floor spacing rather than constant physical contact or emotionally charged confrontations that usually lead to technical fouls. So why were three players with such different playing styles sitting in the same disciplinary category by the middle of the season? Many fans found that difficult to explain as nothing more than coincidence. The situation naturally raised questions, and when those questions went unanswered, people began reaching their own conclusions. Unfortunately for the league, many of those conclusions were not favorable. In response to that silence, the fan community created something surprisingly organized despite having no official structure. Every technical foul involving Clark was now being tracked in real time. Fans refreshed box scores during games to see whether another technical had been added. They created screenshot threads with video clips and timestamps for every disputed call. They compared Clark's technical foul history with players whose behavior appeared similar or even more aggressive. This was no longer random frustration. It had turned into a highly organized effort to document and verify every controversial decision. The fan base had effectively become its own fact-checking department. They were organized, persistent, and unwilling to let any questionable call pass without careful review. That created an entirely new kind of pressure for the league office. Every officiating decision now became part of a growing public record because so many people were watching, documenting, and discussing every game. Even without a formal campaign, petition, or official spokesperson, that level of constant attention became a powerful form of pressure on its own. With every new incident, the discussion continued to grow instead of fading away. Beyond all of that, there was also a financial side to the story that deserved far more attention than it usually received. Before the season even began, the WNBA quietly reorganized its system for handling technical fouls. Under the league's updated system, technical fouls number 4 through 7 now carry a $1,000 fine each, a major increase from the $200 starting penalty used in previous seasons. While the rule applies equally to every player, its impact feels very different depending on who is collecting those technical fouls. For a player like Caitlin Clark, who is already close to the suspension limit, the financial cost of frustration has risen quickly. A professional athlete may be able to afford a $1,000 fine, but the amount itself is not the real issue. The bigger concern is what the system says about the league's priorities. When the cost of reacting to questionable officiating continues to rise, while the calls that trigger those reactions remain unchanged, the responsibility is placed entirely on the player. In other words, the system suggests that increasing the penalty for reacting to inconsistency is the answer instead of addressing the inconsistency itself. Fans who believe the real issue is the quality of officiating rather than Clark's reactions have taken notice of that approach. Clark herself has never framed this as a personal complaint. Throughout the season, she has been careful to steer the conversation away from individual calls and toward a broader structural issue. Her public message has remained consistent. She has repeatedly called for the WNBA to replace its current part-time officiating system with full-time officials. That is an important distinction. She is not asking for special treatment, and she is not demanding that the league overturn calls in her favor. Instead, she argues that improving officiating consistency would benefit every player on the court, making it a staffing and infrastructure issue rather than a personal one. That position gives her argument more credibility than if it were simply based on frustration. It shifts the entire discussion from whether Clark receives too many technical fouls to whether the league's officiating system needs improvement. Those are two very different debates, and the second one is much harder for the league office to dismiss without appearing unwilling to address a problem that can be fixed. So what happens if another technical foul is added? Once the emotion is removed, the rules are straightforward. If Clark reaches her 9th technical foul during the regular season, the WNBA automatically suspends her for 1 game. That suspension comes with a mandatory night on the bench, a $1,500 fine, and no hearing or appeal that changes the outcome. For most players on most teams, that would certainly be inconvenient. But for the Indiana Fever, the impact would be much greater. Sitting at 15 wins and 10 losses, Indiana is fighting for playoff positioning in a conference that has become increasingly competitive. Clark averages nearly 21 points, almost 8 assists, and 4 rebounds every game. She is more than just Indiana's best player. She is the center of the Fever's entire offensive system. She creates open shots for her teammates, forces defenses to completely adjust their strategy, and stretches the floor with her shooting range in ways no other player on the roster can duplicate. Remove her from the lineup, and the Fever do not simply lose one player. They are forced to run an entirely different offense with only 48 hours to prepare during one of the most important stretches of the season. Rebuilding an offensive identity in that amount of time is almost impossible. It cannot be done smoothly, and it certainly does not come without consequences. But the damage from a suspension would extend well beyond Indiana's win-loss record. This season, Clark has brought something to every game that the WNBA has spent years trying to build. She has helped increase television ratings, boost attendance, and generate nationwide attention at a level women's basketball has rarely been able to sustain consistently. Every arena she visits sells out. Broadcasters regularly point to her games as reliable audience magnets. Even the league has acknowledged that her presence has accelerated the sport's growth far beyond what any single marketing campaign could have accomplished. Suspending a player like Clark costs more than just 1 game. At a time when casual fans are more engaged with women's basketball than ever before, it means losing one of the league's biggest attractions, along with the viewers and attention she consistently brings. Is the WNBA truly prepared for what a game without Clark might mean for television ratings and fan interest? That is no longer just a hypothetical question. It is a very real possibility that sits only a couple of technical fouls away. Because of that, fans now treat every technical foul as its own separate storyline. During Fever games, people refresh box scores in real time to see whether Clark has picked up another technical that moves her closer to suspension. Every interaction she has with an official is examined with a level of detail usually reserved for playoff games. Whenever she says something to a referee after a whistle, social media briefly pauses, waiting to see whether another technical foul has been called. That kind of non-stop attention eventually becomes exhausting for everyone involved, including Clark herself. She is a fierce competitor who plays with passion and energy because that is exactly what elite basketball demands. Very few athletes in any sport have ever had to deal with the mental pressure of controlling that intensity in front of the entire world. It is not just about performing with the game on the line. It is also about knowing that a suspension countdown is always hanging in the background. When every whistle carries so much weight, how many players in any professional league are expected to control every emotional reaction with that level of caution? The answer is very few. And the ones who do usually have something in common. They are the biggest stars, attract the largest audiences, and carry the most recognizable names in the sport. That brings the conversation right back to Caitlin Clark. None of this means she should be excused for legitimate technical fouls. No one is arguing that. Instead, it shows just how difficult and uncomfortable this entire debate has become. Right now, the margin for error has become incredibly small. Clark is playing the best basketball of her career, while the pressure surrounding her continues to grow. The stakes have never been higher, not only for her, but also for her teammates, coaches, broadcasters, and the league itself. Is it really fair to expect the most closely watched player in the sport to compete with so little room for error while sitting just a couple of technical fouls away from a forced suspension during the best season of her career? The situation becomes even more difficult when you consider everything Clark has already gone through to reach this point in the season. Early on, injury concerns forced her coaching staff to place her on a minutes restriction as she worked her way back. Throughout the season, there has also been constant discussion about the amount of physical contact she absorbs every night, creating another ongoing debate about whether the rules are being enforced consistently when defenders play against her. Add to that a fine system that becomes more expensive with every technical foul, a suspension threshold that is now only 2 technicals away, and a league office that still has not publicly addressed the structural concerns she continues to raise. That places an enormous amount of pressure on one player during what should be one of the happiest and most rewarding stretches of her career. A week that started with a remarkable 45-point and 10-assist performance quickly became a countdown toward another fine and a possible suspension. Those are 2 completely different storylines, and that contrast is exactly why many people believe this issue has grown far beyond any single game or single whistle. No team should have to deal with this kind of distraction while pushing toward the playoffs. According to many Fever fans, every game now involves more than simply watching basketball. They are also watching the technical foul count, wondering if the next whistle will be the one that changes everything. That has become the underlying tension surrounding every Indiana game. It was not part of the conversation a season ago, and many believe it only exists because the people with the authority to provide a clear answer have allowed the issue to continue without directly addressing it. The July 18th fine, the June technical that was never overturned, Clark's repeated requests for full-time referees, the suspension countdown, the detailed fan documentation, and the careful public comments from Indiana's head coach have all become part of the same larger story. In the end, it all comes down to one important question. Does the WNBA plan to give Caitlin Clark a real response? Not another public statement, not another quiet adjustment hidden inside a league memo, but a meaningful response to her repeated argument that inconsistent officiating is a structural problem requiring a structural solution. Many believe the league needs to show that it has heard those concerns and is prepared to take real action. So far, the response has mostly been silence and fines. And when silence and fines continue long enough, they begin to look less like isolated decisions and more like an ongoing policy. Since the spring, fans have documented every controversial whistle, and there is no sign they intend to stop. What began as a discussion within WNBA circles has now expanded into the broader sports world and continues to gain attention. At the same time, Clark has shown no sign of backing away from the concerns she has raised throughout the season. That means the pressure is now coming from 3 different directions at once: the player, the media, and the fans. So far, the league office has not found a response that settles the discussion without creating even more questions. The countdown continues. Just 2 more technical fouls would turn this conversation from a possibility into reality. If that happens, the league's biggest star would miss a game that many people would see not as a routine disciplinary action, but as the latest chapter in a story that has been building since June. Every remaining game on Indiana's schedule matters in the playoff race. Every possession matters, and every one of those games has been built around the expectation that Clark will be on the floor leading an offense that works best with her at the center of it. The pressure is already there. Whether another technical foul comes next week or later in the season, the question is already hanging over every game. The WNBA has publicly credited one player with helping transform the league's popularity and commercial success over the past 2 seasons. Now that same player is only 2 technical fouls away from being suspended in the middle of a playoff race. Fans are no longer wondering what that would mean. They are simply waiting to see whether the league understands what it could mean as well. The fans have documented every moment. The media has built the story. Clark has clearly stated her position. The only unanswered question now is whether the WNBA is truly listening or whether it will continue handing out fines while hoping the conversation eventually fades away. Many believe it will not. Let us know in the comments if you think the WNBA owes Caitlin Clark a genuine response. And if you found this analysis valuable, make sure to subscribe because this story is far from over.